This just lets you know Red is not about like, oh, you gotta like us.
Panavision used to hate us. We were a little disruptive to the rental industry. And then Airy was another one where, oh my God, you know, it's Red versus Airy. And I got to be careful because I'm running on so many builds in front of normal release builds. I thought it would take us a decade to get up to where these other guys are going. And that's one of the beauties of, you know, having that Canon mount on our cameras.
And so today I'm really excited to bring up onto the show for the very first time, Mr. Jared Land, the CEO of Red. I am so excited to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Okay. Okay. First thing, Mr. Porter, I got to hire you to come into every single one of our Red stores and redo them.
Say insane. No more. Wait.
This is insane. Your background looks better than most of our stores. Good job. I love
thank you. We literally did it last second. I was like, should I put the Raptor up on display? And my assistant was like, yes, we're doing it right now. And like 10 minutes go by and we just start transforming the whole set.
I want to come to your house and shop.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Look like. It's good. And thanks for having me, Brandon. I didn't want to jump in and to your discussion because I think it was an important one. And I think you guys hit on a lot of really important things that's hard as a creator. You know, when you are in this crazy job, crazy market that we are, and you decide to do it, it's one of those rare things where most people, it's a hobby for them and it's a passion. And to be able to work like that, you know, most accountants or, you know, name another job, you don't do that in your spare time for fun. And filmmaking, I think, is one of those. It's like music. It's one of those things that people do in their spare time. So when you can make it a job, you want to keep it a hobby, a passion. If you do something, you guys just explained it so perfectly. If you do a wedding and you're like, oh my God, this is so emotional, I can't deal with this, and know when to stop. Mr. Porter, when he says music videos, you know, and there's a lot of emotion and romance to music videos, you know, it's the coolest thing you can do in a lot of people's minds. When you do it and you're like, oh man, this isn't for me, to know when to shift, you've got to always keep doing that to keep that fire going, I think. So you guys kind of nailed it right off the top. So I love jumping in at that moment because it's what we do at Red. It's the same thing, you know. If it starts to get boring, we change it up.
Yeah, that's one of the things like I notice even when I look at Red's actual like Instagram and like the content that you guys share is it's like there's always such a diverse like bits of like industries, whether people are shooting nature or, you know, you got people like Porter who are shooting weddings, or you've got people who are shooting corporate stuff like what we do. Like it just the tool allows you to really just take advantage of whatever industry you're in. Like one of our favorite ones is like we shoot a lot of concerts and festivals during during festival season, and like the fact that we can take the same tool to like all these different types of industries and still be able to like maximize what we get out of it, I find that that's something that's really, really fun and interesting. But obviously, one of the big reasons why we asked Jared to be on today was because of this new camera announcement. So Jared, before we ask you any questions about the camera, I got to ask you what makes you most excited about this new camera and about the direction that Red is moving in?
Well, I think and you guys actually, it was funny because, and I gotta forgive me if I drop out. I'm in my bunker in Big Sur with really shady satellite internet, so I might drop out. But I was on a really boring, I shouldn't say that out loud, but call. And while I was listening to you guys in the background when you started, before I jumped on here, and you kind of said that, you know, what people use their cameras for, you know, and it goes from the smallest shoot where you're just by yourself to a big on-set massive production. And from Red, from when we started, and Jim and I really are shooters, like we shoot, and a lot of that times it's by ourselves. So we always go into making these cameras for ourselves as much as we listen to you guys, because we really feel like we're one of you guys. Honestly, it just feels like, us three are all the same. We're just doing this because we love it. So a lot of the things kind of stem from that. And then there's a lot of influence, of course, from these massive shoots, Hollywood shoots that need a bunch of stuff. And that's where you see kind of the XL camera come along. And, for me, the XL is the big beast that I probably don't bring out the most. For me, it's this guy. It's the Komodo X. And I talked about the Komodo X, but this little Raptor, when you think of what it can do when you're by yourself, that gets me the most excited. And it's just trying to put in it as much things as we possibly can, and I saw a fox, and I've got a little setup with foxes over in it, and there's motion control and robotics, and it's an insane setup, but I can't tell you how exciting and how much that fox has helped engineering, because when you can't get to the camera and you're by yourself and you got to do something, you need to be able to control it. You need to be able to monitor it. You need to be able to do a lot of things that not a lot of people are shooting foxes in the woods, but that applies to a lot of things that you guys do, and everybody else does. And you see things like full control and, autofocus becoming really important. And there's a reason why our autofocus. Sorry.
I said, that's what I was asking about. Even when the KX first came out, that's one of my big moments. I was like, okay, because I remember there was a time where the Red Control Pro app had face tracking autofocus before it was in the cameras, and I found it on accident. And I was like, wait a minute, it's here. Why is it not in the cameras? Like, what's going on? And I asked you when the KX first came out, and you were like, there's some technological things. We got to keep working at it. And now the updates have come. But with the new Raptor, now it's coming straight out, and there's been some enhancements to it. And I saw you have it. You have it right in front of you, right? Can you show the people? The people want to see it.
Oh, I forgot. There's a lot of people getting this today.
Oh, he just forgot. He casually forgot. He's got the latest and greatest Rick. Oh, I just forgot I got the Raptor X, right? No.
I've been using it for months out here, so I'm kind of like, ignore all the stuff
my goodness.
over here, wherever that is.
Can we get a zoom in and enhance what's going on back there?
And there is, Mikhail, who does full control, which does red control. I mean, there's a good example of one guy that is just a savant. The guy, can develop things sometimes quicker than it takes 5 meetings for, a team of engineers to think about starting. And that face control was a good start. And if you notice, and then I get excited because I get to test it. And full control is really important for me for that remote shooting. I mean, I could literally, when the camera's up in a tree somewhere, I can control focus, I control start stop, I can offload. Offloading happened with him first as well. So that all happened through full control before. And if you tried our face tracking when it first came out, there's a reason that it worked on dogs better than people and foxes. Because
with those.
that was the test. And, I love seeing this from, other companies kind of adopt this stuff, because it just makes all of our lives easy. All our lives, when I say our lives, I mean as a customer. I'm a customer first before anything.
Well, and I like that. I like that you guys actually use the cameras, so that way, like, because sometimes, you get feedback to a company and they're like, we don't really know. Is that really something that people care about? But when you guys actually use it, you actually get a chance to be like, oh no, they're right. We're also experiencing the same thing. All right, so we got a special question that came in via a super chat from Mr. Cam Mackey, and his question was, how is the KX doing the highlight recovery? So what is this magic that's going on in the new highlight recovery?
So some of you might remember HDRX, and this isn't HDRX or Magic Motion. We kind of it started as one thing and evolved into another. But HDRX is kind of the precursor to what our recovery is. So you don't need this highlight recovery. You don't need to use it. This isn't fixing anything to do with global shutter. You're not fixing the limitations of a global shutter by adding this special mode. We've already done that. You've seen that on the Komodo with the global shutter. We've already beat the, some say the laws of physics, but it's not. It's just really smart engineering. We've already made global shutter as good as rolling shutter. So the other thing that you get when you have a global shutter and a ton of horsepower that the Raptor has is something that Graham and Lauren, are two really smart guys at Red, kind of looked at what we did in the past and then took all this horsepower that we had plus the global shutter and made a new version that basically takes multiple images and combines them. It's a really, really stupid and simple way to say it, but it runs so fast, this camera, that you can capture different. Oh, is that me doing that?
He's on a Mac.
As you guys can tell, this is live. This is live. This is not pre-recorded. He's got owl gestures going on.
This started happening to me yesterday, these hand gestures. Like I go like this and all of a sudden, oh yeah, look. Oh my God.
Your computer is just so excited about these new features that it's going live with you.
Fireworks. I love it.
It's so exciing. That's just how it is. That's what we're talking about.
So anyways, the one thing you probably noted, it's really hard, and you guys already said it's really hard to blow out this camera anyways, just the normal Raptor, the OG Raptor. We got to call Raptor OG now. But it's really hard to blow it, but there's some situations where there's just a little slice of sky or, some chrome somewhere or something just going nuclear in the background that takes away your eye. So you wish that could come back into, the range of something that camera can resolve, but you don't want to underexpose everything else in the scene just to bring that back. So this highlight recovery is really great to extend where you can all of a sudden grab that stuff back, and you can just leave it. If you're not shooting high frame rates, you can just leave this mode on all the time. You see what's going on your monitor, so you can expose correctly. And you can turn it off if it does something, because sometimes it's weird when a blown out sky all of a sudden comes back into, it's like one of those really weird HDR effects where all of a sudden everything's in exposure. So you have that control to turn it off if you want, as long as you're not shooting ProRes, only ProRes, of course. But when you're shooting red code, you can shut that off in post. So it's just a nice little kind of icing on top. So you're still getting that 17. You guys explained it better than I did, actually. You still get that 17 stops just with all that stuff off. But to grab that extra 3 stops when you need it as kind of a safety, it's really nice to have. So we're really excited about that. And that has a lot to do with harnessing the global shutter, of course, because it removes all the artifacts that broke HDRX in the past. And just the speed that this camera can run at and the horsepower.
So I have my follow-up question then becomes is like, with this new horsepower that the camera has and the new speed that it can actually operate at, is this what has like improved the autofocus or the intelligent autofocus of the actual camera? And like, how are we, like, what differences are we going to see from Raptor and KX's updates to now having face detect or face tracking autofocus to now this new phase detect in the Raptor X?
Yeah. So, and I got to be careful because I'm running on so many builds, of course, in front of normal release builds. But, Komodo X.
Inside scoop, guys.
So you're confirming we got some exciting things coming. That's what I heard.
Komodo X obviously has, some really strong autofocus abilities. That's kind of where this really started to pick up. And I think we just released a build a couple months ago that showed some of that work. The autofocus is really actually a combination of, mostly it's an algorithm thing. It's phase detect on the sensor. So the sensor has a lot to do with it, which we use now instead of contrast autofocus, which is some cameras still use it, but it's really horrible. And so when we have that horsepower, we can do things, but there's always, every lens has to be calibrated. So autofocus to the level that Sony and Canon and Nikon and everybody, they make the lenses. So it's all one system that they can kind of have talk to each other, because the speed, it's not just what lenses. It's like if you have an 85 millimeter 1.2, that glass is really heavy. So to move it is a lot slower. So the camera needs to know, okay, we want to autofocus really fast, but we can't because mechanically it's really heavy. So every lens has to be calibrated by us, recalibrated to match what the autofocus is doing. So that's really one of the biggest limitations now that we have all the hardware in the camera, is just the software work that it takes. And that's why you see with firmware updates, every few firmware updates, you get this pretty big jump in autofocus ability. And it's actually way further than, when we started autofocus on the Komodo, way back when the OG Komodo came out, I really didn't expect much. Like I thought it would take us a decade to get up to where these other guys are going. And don't get me wrong, like Sony autofocus is pretty incredible. But all the other guys are kind of the same, but we're getting really, really good at the autofocus. And that's mostly this continued software work that's going on, and the calibrating of lenses. And so a lot of lenses have actually gotten a lot better too, because when Canon needs to make the lens and makes it better at focusing and better speeds and quieter motors and less breathing and all that stuff, we benefit from that. And that's one of the beauties of, having that Canon mount on our cameras. We kind of inherit a lot of that stuff.
Okay. So I guess it's safe to say that going forward, you guys are pretty invested in that RF mount. And that's one of the, I think, is it finding ways to work within these new RF cameras, RF lenses? Because as we know, Canon's still coming out with new RF lenses. It feels like every couple months. So when that lens comes out, is it at that point you guys have to start the calibration process of that lens and then make sure that it'll work well within the camera?
Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, there's lenses actually have firmware updates as well sometimes. Most of them are invisible to the user. That kind of happens through the camera when you put it on, and a lot of cameras don't even tell you it's happening. So we got to kind of keep track of that. But, and you said it before at the beginning when we this guy, this.
Wait, you got to hold it really good so I can get a thumbnail.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. This is my camera's backwards here. So,
love it.
But this is a nice, we make Panavision's DXL, of course. So that's kind of one of these unions that Panavision used to hate us when we started Red. Absolutely hated us because we were a little disruptive to the rental industry, and we were kind of cowboys about the whole thing. So we were kind of disruptive in not a good way for a lot of people, and they just didn't like the way that we were doing things, and people thought that we would never work together. And we ended up making their camera with them, of course. And then Arri was another one where, oh my God, it's Red versus Arri, and people don't realize how well we work together how I have a lot of relationships with all of these companies. It's kind of like saying, directors versus directors. There's some directors that hate each other, of course. We hear about those. But a lot of them work together, even though they're technically competitors. It's the same thing as in our industry. In the camera industry, there's a lot of people, that are grumpy about things. And they're usually quite older for whatever reason. But I have a lot of great relations. So Canon mount, the RF mount, I chose that on the camera, back on the Komodo, because it was just the best mount at that time. It wasn't a relationship thing. It wasn't, Canon asking us to do it or anything like that. It was because it was the best tool made by somebody else. And when you look at relationships like that, where you can actually benefit from being friendly with your competitors, because people do better things than we do, a lot better than we do. We do some things better than our competitors do. And this world is too small, and the economy is kind of wacky. You can't just do stuff yourself. It's not the smartest way to do business, is just to isolate yourself and, put your fist up against everybody else that is your competitor. And I could say the same thing of filmmakers as well, working together and working with people that you don't think you'd work together, that is competing for many of the same jobs. You just benefit from it. It's really something that I embraced when we started allowing third parties on accessories. And that was a long time ago. That was DSMC 2 time, when we tried to make everything ourselves. And I have a warehouse of stuff and accessories that are just junk. I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. We made a lot of really bad stuff. And that stuff is, you learn from that, and you learn, okay, maybe we don't need to do everything ourselves. And, we had a booth at NAB one year, and I blocked off half of our booth to who used to be our competitors, third-party accessory companies like Frame.io that was making that was their first Frame.io, who, Adobe picked up, but with a huge acquisition. They had their first show in our booth at NAB during that time, where I was like, let's let third parties kind of come in and work with us and benefit our customers. Because if we have to make 1,000 things, we're only going to be able to allocate 15 minutes of time to making a proper top plate. Whereas if there's a company that just makes top plates and they can spend 24 hours a day making it, you better believe they're probably going to do better than you. So why not just, work with them instead of trying to do it all yourself? So that was the biggest kind of thing. And you'll see that from us. You've seen that from us working with companies like Arri and Panavision, and even behind the scenes, like most, this patent stuff is crazy with our red code. We've licensed red code to almost every company that matters. There's not this big war. We gotta wait for the patent to expire. We've embraced this. We've created it was very expensive to create that technology, but we're not keeping it to ourselves. We work with every company, and it's kind of sharing that technology. And then we get a lot of things either from not camera companies that help us. This Mutiny company that makes accessories, they just came out of nowhere. Just 2 guys really in their garage making accessories. It's like literally, it is such a beautiful story. But they make things better than most big companies do. And I just look at these guys, I'm like, oh my God, why wouldn't we embrace these guys? And then, there's 100 other, 2 people in a garage making things. And you're like, wow, okay, let's just all be a community, work together, and everybody wins. We win. It costs us less in development, and we don't have to hire 5 million engineers to do everything. the community wins and you as filmmakers win, because the products just get better and better and better.
Yeah, and I think we've definitely seen that upgrade as we moved from 2 to 3 with the KX, or with the Komodo when it first came out, like accessories being partnered in, and like now, like, you know, some, like a company that I would already buy their monitor, Small HD, you guys are now partnering with them to make the 7-inch touch monitor, which is like, it now just works better. Because I was going to buy a small HD monitor anyway, but now because it works directly, like natively with the camera, it just makes my system work easier. Angelbird cards, things like that. And I think for anyone who's watching this, Jared just dropped like a gem like it was nothing, because it was on the high level of, you know, these big camera companies. But as filmmakers, like, this is the exact same thing that we should be doing. Like, we should be working together, finding local creators in your area, or even people who don't necessarily live in your area. I mean, like me and Justin, we talk probably like 3 or 4 times a week. And we're talking about, like, his business is weddings, my business is corporate, but like, we're giving each other advice, we're helping each other, we're both making social content and giving each other advice on the social content. And so we're technically like competitors for attention, but like at the end of the day, we're both just trying to help people. So if we can help each other help more people, it just becomes a bigger domino that can kind of like tower down and just continue to help more people, which I think is a great nugget that Jared kind of gave from like the high level of like cameras. But I think anyone who's watching this can take that bit of information and apply it to really anything that you're doing. And I think that's really important. So Justin, I know you had a question for him, so I'll let you go ahead and ask your question next, and kind of bring it up.
Well, he kind of answered it. My biggest thing was about the highlight, and you actually said this too, which I found out actually too, that you're not sacrificing your shadow, and that's like the biggest thing, is that you can now push and get highlight recovery without, like, most of us, we would have to pick and choose, like, okay, do I want to, you know, expose for this little bit of chrome on the car, or like this little bit of, you know, specular highlights? And to do that, you've got to darken the whole image, which means, okay, do I care about the stuff in the tree, under the trees and the shade? Whereas now we can keep it where it's at, and then just get that extra little juice from the camera because of like the processing power and what it's capable of doing. So he kind of answered it. Like, that was my biggest thing, was just asking about how that happened, you know, how you're able to like pull that off. So that's pretty awesome.
That was eloquent. You said it very well, and that was a really good summary, because I tend to just talk and talk and talk. But you're right. You know, when you turn it on and off, nothing's happening from your 17 stops down. That's just real sensor happening. So when you turn it on, it's just giving you that extra stuff at the top, and you don't have to worry, you know, oh my God, if I turn this on, the only sacrifice is obviously you're recording both tracks is frame rates. So you can't shoot, you know, full frame rates when it's on, because that has to go to that highlight track, which is great because that separates them completely. So you have the normal track, and then you have this highlight track, and you can decide, I'm going to put it on and put it off.
So speaking of the track, this is something that I'm personally been like, just like, I've been obsessing over this, I think, for like the last 2 years. And on the show, it's kind of like a joke that eventually I will get an LED wall in here and turn this entire thing into a virtual production. And I noticed the new Phantom track that you guys have in this camera. So it feels like, because I saw it with the KX already, like global shutter, definitely there's a huge benefit to using that on an LED wall, especially gin locking it directly in. But now you guys have this new Phantom track that's taking virtual production sort of to that next level, where you can basically be able to film not only the actual digital environment, but also then get a green screen track as well in case you want to do stuff in post. So like, how do you see this technology advancing? Because this isn't something that I'm seeing pretty much on any other camera, or that I'm at least aware of.
Yeah, there's two, you know, this technology really, Megapixel and Brompton kind of both have this. Unreal has, you know, the ability to support it. but because of especially the global shutter. It's why you see global shutter. I mean, even Arri uses Komodos on their virtual production stage. You can see it in their ads, which is awesome.
I saw that.
But
I remember you tweeted that.
But
that was
that
awesome.
global shutter really, really, really helps, especially when you're doing these kind of things where you're doing that phantom track. You can almost think of it kind of like what the highlights does, but in a different way. So that's really that virtual production for me. And it's something that I've talked to a lot. If I didn't have this business and I had to think of a business or a product to create, it would be wall panels for normal people. Like for me, I would spend all my money creating 1 foot by 1 foot, 1/2 inch thick panels that all link together. So you and me and most people watching this didn't have to spend $1 million to make a wall. You could use this as your normal TV when you're watching and just put 20 of these things together to make a big screen TV, which is easier to ship. In so many reasons. But a consumer level panel is, I hope somebody's working on it. I really do, because that's when our world is going to change, and that's going to make, everybody's done green screen before, but right now, I mean, I've worked with some of the biggest filmmakers, and when they get deep, they want to do virtual production on the big level, but also for pickups and stuff on the little level. And it's just too hard to get, even a 10-foot wall, it's really expensive. You have to, people don't realize how much power and heat those things generate. And so you have to have air conditioning and bring in new power. So for me, I'm just in my mind imagining, okay, these consumer panels are going to come sometime. Somebody's got to be working on these things. When that comes, a lot of people are going to be using them, and not just for directly shooting, but for lighting as well. Like I've seen a lot of really great examples. Most of the ceilings in virtual production stages are just purely to augment lighting. People aren't actually shooting into them, but you can do some really cool things with RGB lighting effects using these virtual production stages. So be able to sync with the camera. And Jeff Goodman who's kind of our god of product at Red. He really dived deep into virtual production a couple of years ago and made that kind of his personal passion. So he's been driving that hard, and it's why our camera works so well in those scenarios, and it's just advancing. But I think that missing piece is that consumer level, and once that happens, we're going to be ready. So that's why, that's kind of why we're pushing this so far, because we do think there's a future to it when that happens. But right now, I don't, humbly, I think we're the best camera for shooting virtual production, period. It's, just from a technical aspect. So we're really excited to follow that.
Well, you can say it humbly, and I will say it unhumbly.
I was about to say.
This is the best camera for virtual productions. I have been on a few virtual production sets, and we always go back. We went to the original Komodo for the longest, and now we use the KX on it, and it really does make a huge difference. And like, I'm not the technical guy. Like Jared broke down like the expenses and the heat and all of that, but there's a whole nother level of technical work that has to go to virtual productions, like Unreal artists and having people who understand like the tracking and all of that stuff. And I'm normally like just directing on the sets or cam opping or something, but like to understand that whole side is a whole nother list of work. And on each of the jobs that I've been on, when a Red camera is in the center of the production, it just goes so much smoother. And like, obviously I don't know all the technical stuff, but I can say that when we have like the KX in the center, it's by far the smoothest that we ever have to deal with. And we don't ever have to deal with any issues or delays on the actual screen, especially once it's gen locked. That global shutter makes a huge difference. And so that has been absolutely huge. Jared, we won't take up too much more of your time, but I do want to ask one final question of you. And when it comes to like, obviously you guys are very secretive. Like, we had no idea this was coming, and you just dropped this on us out of nowhere. I'm like getting excited about an EVF off your teases, and then like you drop this on us. So like, to save me from having another day of just like losing all productivity because I'm like now going down the rabbit hole, what are some of the things right now that you guys are excited about and that you guys are constantly pushing towards or working towards next that you can share with us? Obviously, I know you can't share everything, but what are some things that you guys are currently excited about that you guys have coming up next or that you're currently working on for the industry?
Well, I think you touched on, and I'm sorry if we kind of ruined your day, but in a good way. But it's not as much as keeping secret. When we started Red, we used to say, this is what we're doing in 5 years, and this is the cameras we were making for 5 years, and it was dumb. I mean, we not even release the camera we're working on, and we're already talking publicly about the next one. That's not a good way to run a business. But apart from learning from that, we also noticed kind of in the industry, actually every industry, people announce stuff and then they're like, oh, shipping sometime next year. And as a customer, I just started hating that because I know it's wrong, but I feel like, what I have doesn't matter. I need to have this new thing. I'm a horrible consumer like that. But it also
You're in the company of others. You're okay. You're in a safe space. We're all the same.
Yeah. We all feel that anger. Don't tell me that this is going to change my life and tell me I can't get it for you. I hate. Yeah,
I know. I can't stand it. So I kind of made this dedication a few years ago that when we announce stuff, it better be in a box ready to ship. And if you notice, we've been doing that. Some accessories just take some time to get through the manufacturing process, especially when we don't make them all. But with the cameras, it's like, let's announce it when it's ready to ship to customers. And that seems just to be a good idea. It upsets some people because they're like, oh, I just bought my camera 3 months ago and now you announce this new one. That's going to happen with technology. Well, it's going to happen with anything, really. Mm-hmm. Technology, cars, there's a new car every year. It doesn't mean you have to buy the new thing every time. You probably should jump, one or two until it's right for you. Again, I'm a horrible consumer and I just forget about that. I buy a new iPhone every year, even if I don't need to, and there's really nothing about it. It's just one of those things where I like Apple, where they're like, okay, except for the Vision Pro, but usually with their phone, it's like, okay, here's the phone, we're announcing it, and you just got to wait 2 weeks. That's okay.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, okay, I'll wait a couple of weeks if I get in my order in quickly and I can have it. But this 6 months coming in the spring or fall or whatever just drives me crazy. So we've stopped kind of doing that. It doesn't mean I don't tease out, and it's very strategic, my post. And there's some things, like you've seen images from this Raptor X months ago that I posted. There's very strategic testing, that's going on behind the scenes. But I think it's just better for everybody, including you guys, if we just don't say, hey, we're working on this next, and it's still 6 months or a year away, but get excited about it and still love what you have. I think it's better just to drop it and say it's ready. The other thing, and I'm sorry, this is a long answer, but the other thing that is good about that is it's ready when it's ready. So if you say,
no pun intended.
Well,
when it's ready.
When it's ready. But if we say, hey, here's our Raptor X and it's coming in 6 months and May 1st, the engineers are working until, April 30th, and they might not have everything done, but we've already committed to this date. So it's got to be pushed it out, and maybe it's not ready. Whereas something like this, and this time, like when this is ready, we didn't set this date in stone, yesterday, saying this is when we're going to release it. When we started, it's kind of like, okay, let engineering have their time, let marketing have their time. We still have these soft deadlines to get things done. But if it came to yesterday and, oh my God, the camera starts on fire sometimes when we start it, most companies, there'd be a discussion between marketing and product and financing, like, okay, well, we'll just tell people it's a firmware update and it won't start on fire, down the road. We can just say, hey, nobody knows about this camera yet, so let's just wait a week and see if the engineers can fix the fire from happening, and nobody's feelings get hurt. Nobody, gets upset. And then next Thursday, we would have been having, that discussion. So it just works on so many ways. I want the industry to get away from this announce now, or, I will always tease. It's just, and my team hates it. I'm horrible. I just get too excited about things. But teasing a week before is a lot better than, a year or 6 months before. Even, 3 months is a little bit hard. So I just think that's best. So that's a really long answer to you. I'm not going to tell you what we're working on next. But
that was smooth workaround.
That was smooth.
But it's a lot of, I really enjoy collaborating with other companies that are really good at doing things. So that's what I'm excited personally about, and I think you'll see a lot of that come from us. This Airy Tron camera, that was just a small little thing for this movie and the cinematographer. But we learned a lot of things. They had to make a special mount for their lenses, and they have a lot of great technology. And I love that. And it's not just like Airy, like Mutiny. That guy makes stuff. And I'm picking on Mutiny, but there's a million companies like this now. I just love working with these people that have these really keen abilities to make things that we wouldn't have even thought about, and have the time to dedicate to make them really good. So that's kind of, collaboration, I think, and us working with other companies is something that you'll probably see in the future. I just won't tell you exactly what that is. Yeah.
That's okay. I actually I appreciate that answer more, because it actually hits more of the pain points that I think we deal with on a regular basis. You get excited about this camera, it gets announced. It's like, oh, you go pre-order it, but you don't know when it's going to ship. And then depending on the brand, and everybody knows what brand I'm talking about, they'll drop a new camera before yours even ships, and now you're stuck. Look, Porter can't look. It's so annoying when that happens. You can't even get your camera, and it's like I'm excited about this camera, and it hasn't shipped yet. But then you go drop a new camera, and it's got newer features. Should I cancel my order and then it's a never-ending cycle? So I can appreciate your answer, even though it's not an answer. I can appreciate your answer, but more importantly, I appreciate your time and you coming on here and just answering questions for us, and just being here for the community, because it really does make a difference, and we really do appreciate it. It goes a long way.
I'm a big fan of both you guys, Mr. Porter, James, and Riley. Say hi. I know you spent a lot of time with them, and they were inspired by you, I think, in Toronto. Is that where you?
Yeah, Toronto.
Yeah. So thank you for giving them that much time. It was crazy how much time you guys spent together. But both of you guys, and Brandon, keep killing it, because I've followed you from the beginning, and I just love the passion. You can tell you love what you're doing, and you're sharing that with the world. So keep on going, guys. I love it.
We really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.